If you're a health of a life coach who's been experiencing comparison with other coaches, feeling some imposter syndrome around your work, and maybe even feeling like you just want to burn your business down, I'm going to be talking about my experience of dealing with all these things and the 3 energetic and mindset shifts that have helped me get more clients, income, and sales. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help heart-centered and highly sensitive health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses, and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about some of the mindset and energetic shifts that have really helped me, honestly, completely transform my business. So I've been through quite a journey over the last couple of years. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but basically these things have been so profound for me that they've completely shifted me into a new energetic space when it comes to my business and the kind of results that I'm getting in terms of income, the number of clients that I'm attracting, and the sales that I'm getting as well. If any of this topic is interesting to you, if you are feeling stuck in your coaching business, if you feel like you're playing small, like you're just ready for more, if you know that there's something that you're ready to step into but you're not quite sure how to step into it, then my new masterclass is absolutely for you. It's the Energetic Shift for Coaches. You can find out all the information in the link in the description. And this masterclass is really about me teaching a lot of the key things that have helped me go from experiencing, very up and down months in terms of income, experiencing a lot of shitty feelings around my coaching business, to actually where I am now, which is my income is more than I've ever had. My cash flow is really consistent. Everything just feels so much more full of ease. And even while I've gone through some really difficult personal stuff as well, and I'm sharing all of that stuff in this masterclass, as well as the things that I do with my actual clients, because while the strategy is amazing, strategy can only take us so far, and sometimes we actually have to do that inner work. So this is all about that, but it will be delivered in my usual down-to-earth, practical style. So please do go and check out that workshop. It does go live, so I'm going to deliver it live on the 28th of January at 1 p.m. UK time or 8 a.m. ET. But if you do come along, if you just sign up and you can't make it live, you do get the recording to keep, and there's a couple of bonuses as well. It's only £33 or $44. Please do come along. It is, I'm so excited to talk about this stuff. Obviously I'm going to talk about some of it today, but I'm going to go into things in so much more depth in that workshop. So please do check out the link in the description and come and join us. So before I start sharing these kind of 3 key mindset and energetic shifts, and as I was saying there are many more that come along with this that I will be sharing in that masterclass, I want to talk a bit about where I was a few years ago and some of the things that I was experiencing, because it might be that you guys are experiencing some of this too. And to a certain degree, a lot of this is quite normal, depending on what stage of business you're at, but you do need to have the tools to be able to shift out of it. So I was really, really struggling with comparison with other coaches and feeling like I was behind, and why is everyone else so much more successful than I am? And, and just kind of feeling really bad about myself because I was measuring myself up against other people. Ultimately, and we can get into a whole thing about comparison, but ultimately people here, I was only seeing a very 2-dimensional version of what they were presenting, but I was really struggling with it to the point where it was on some days it was really crippling. It just made me kind of feel why do I even bother when there's these other people who are clearly so much better than me doing this work? So I really struggled with comparison. I also really struggled, which, links very much with this, with imposter syndrome. So it was a bit who the hell am I to be doing this work? A lot of self-doubt, a lot of kind of just feeling out of my depth a little bit as well. And just, again, this wasn't constant, but it was definitely a background hum. And I think a lot of these things, as we talk through some of these energetic shifts, when these things are here, even just a background hum, sometimes they're very much present and they're very, grabbing our attention and shouting for our attention. But when there's this background hum, that can be actually quite damaging as well. So it was definitely this background hum of noise in terms of feeling this kind of imposter syndrome, this self-doubt. And what came with that imposter syndrome at the time was there was a lot of people talking about, well, you just need to fake it till you make it. But I really struggled with that because it felt incredibly inauthentic. And this comes back to being a highly sensitive and heart-centered person. We can't just fake it till we make it because it feels really, really icky to us, because it's not the truth. And it's fake, literally fake it till you make it. So I was really struggling with that at that time as well. I was also finding that my income was very unsteady. So I was making good money in my business, but it was very much all over the place. And that was just literally wrecking my nervous system. As someone who, when I was previously in a relationship with my ex-partner, my ex-husband, I was still the main breadwinner of the family. And it was incredibly stressful to be going through the ups and downs, and the uncertainty and the lack of safety financially was really stressful, and I was experiencing a lot of that at that time as well. I was also really feeling quite often like I just wanted to burn my entire business down. Now, to a certain degree, sometimes that feeling of just wanting to burn it all down can actually be quite powerful. Sometimes we need to do something drastic to get where we need to go. But what the problem with that is, if you are experiencing that on a regular basis, is that it's awful for your nervous system. It feels really awful to experience, and it really stops your momentum. So that was really problematic, this kind of feeling like I want to burn it all down. Even when I was looking at 9-to-5 jobs, I was looking on the job sites and thinking, seriously, maybe it's time to just go and get a job, Laura, because this feels really uncomfortable, even though you've got a good business here, and you've got amazing clients and so much of it is working. There was so much inside with the way that I was managing and dealing with the ups and downs of running a business that was not sustainable at that time. This is important. I think that we'll get into this. So really difficult feelings around that. And at the time I was experiencing a whole host of personal stuff. So I'm going to talk about this a lot more in the Energetic Shift for Coaches, about stuff in my personal life. As I've already mentioned before on the show, I've been through a separation from my husband over the last couple of years. That's, kind of been ongoing in terms of the actual separation, and then living together, and then him finally moving out. My son was diagnosed with epilepsy, and that was really stressful and worrying and concerning, obviously, at the time. And just a whole heap of personal shit, to be honest. I mean, even going back slightly further, I lost a lot of weight. I think I was carrying some stuff. There's a whole host of things I can say about my identity and my weight and the way that I was showing up for myself and self-care. And again, I will dig into this a little bit more in the Energetic Shift for Coaches. But all of this stuff was going on. So this is kind of where I was at a few years ago, probably early 2023. I think it was probably the time when things all started to unravel, but then also kind of come together in different ways. I'll tell it all in the masterclass, but that's where I was at. And it was not a very comfortable place to be. But what happened was I started to work on some things internally. And when we're talking about energy, for me, it's about the internal state of our nervous system, of our emotional state, all of that kind of stuff that's going on inside, the thoughts that you're having, the behaviours that you then exhibit because of those thoughts, all of that stuff, all of that mindset-y stuff. But also I think there's a big energetic component that is less about the mind things. I think there's an energetic being thing. So I think we can think things, but then there's a being part of it, an embodiment part of it. And this work is kind of a mishmash of that. So the first big kind of energetic / mindset shift that I experienced was around money, and it was around no longer feeling like a victim financially. So what you'll find is all of these are quite personal, but I hope that from me sharing some of these things, they might just kind of, spark a thought or spark a realization for you. But what I realized when I really started to look at, again, this panic with the cash flow being all up and down, and, some months being amazing, some months being not very good at all, and the stress that was causing, was when I really dug under that and really kind of looked at, where is this kind of showing up outside of just the business? Where is this uncomfortableness with money? Where is the stress with money? What is all of that looking like? And what I realised was that I had quite a big victim mentality with money. And this kind of goes back for me personally, but I started to identify this and unpick it. It was so interesting, because with the financial crash in 2008, my family, my husband and everything at the time, we lost a lot of money in the property that we were in. So we lived in a 1-bedroom flat. We basically overnight lost 20 grand. We know we were in negative equity. We basically lived in that flat for 10 years. I had my first child in there in a 1-bedroom flat. It was really, really, hard. And I mean, I know first world problems, yeah. So I am aware of that as well. But we lost a lot of money on that. We basically paid a mortgage and got nowhere with it at the end and had zero left. So it was 10 years of my life was just not really getting anywhere financially. And I realised I had quite a lot of bitterness about that. I was really fucking bitter about it and really angry about it, actually, and was carrying, still maybe there's a little bit anger there because I'm still kind of coming through here. I was really fucking angry about it. But there was also this part of me as well, because I was very, very lucky that, my parents helped us out with a deposit to purchase the house that I'm in now. And I realised there was part of me that just wanted to be saved. Like, I just wanted someone to swoop in and save me from this situation. I just wanted to be saved. And when I realised that, what came up for me was, am I keeping myself in situations where someone can come in and save me, because ultimately I just want someone to come in and save me and make it all okay? And when I had that realisation, it was like a firework going off in my brain, because I was like, you are, like, energetically, are you keeping yourself in this pattern because you want the opportunity for someone to come in and save you and make everything okay? And when I actually stopped doing that, and when I took full responsibility for my financial situation, you know, there was also other things financially. There was some debt that I had as well. And when I finally did that thing where I was like, no one's going to come and save you, Laura. You're going to have to sort this shit out yourself. Like, this is your responsibility. It's no one's fault that you are struggling with this. It's no one's fault that you have debt. It is your problem. You are going to have to solve it. And that was such a big moment for me, because there's the energy underneath that was just massive, because it just took me from this energy, this set of energetics, if you like, where I was feeling like a victim. I was feeling bitter. I was waiting for some knight in shining armour to come in and somehow save me from this situation. And when I stopped doing that, and, you know, I wasn't the damsel in distress anymore, when I kind of stepped into more of an energetic space of like actually handling my own shit, like, that was massive. And I really feel like that has been one of the biggest, like, realizations for me. And I mean, again, this is going to look, you know, again, depending on your circumstances, there's many different versions of what this could look like. But for me, it was really noticing what is going on, what is the feelings underneath this? Like, what am I waiting for? What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What's the emotional thing? It was so interesting to go through this process and just have those realizations. And really, there was no magic wand for this. You know, I'll talk a bit more in the energy shift about some of the more specific things that I did. But a big part of it was actually like just lying in bed at night and just thinking it through. And then all of a sudden it hitting me, and then bursting into tears because I hit on that thing, that sore spot, you know, and it was just massive. So realising ultimately this kind of big shift was partly a taking full personal responsibility for myself and my decisions and my situation, but a bigger part of it from a more of a specific money energetics place was, I'm not waiting to be saved anymore. I'm not waiting for someone to step in and save me. I'm going to do that myself. The second big energetic / mindset shift that I experienced was actually finally realising that I'm actually really fucking good at what I do. So this is connected with the self-doubt and the imposter syndrome. And like I say, you know, I spent a long time really struggling to feel like I was doing a good job. And don't get me wrong, like, I wasn't, you know, I knew that the clients I was working with, I was doing good work. I wasn't selling from a place of like bullshitting myself, but there was always that background hum of like that self-doubt. You know, I spoke about before, this background hum of self-doubt, and really working on that and really reminding myself I'm actually really fucking good at what I do was such a big moment for me, because it has helped me show up with more confidence. It helps me confidently sell what it is that I offer, because I actually believe in it. Like, I really, from top to bottom, inside out, wholeheartedly, if you like, I believe in what it is that I sell and offer. I know that it's good. I know that I am good. I know that I have a lot of knowledge. And part of this big shift has been collecting evidence of that. So, you know, actually really going out there and getting the testimonials and really talking to my clients and really actually, you know, not just in terms of getting people to say, hey, aren't you great, Laura, and things like that, but actually doing the work of, well, is there anything that I could do better? Is there a gap somewhere that I haven't filled that you wanted me to fill? Is there a way that I haven't shown up in the way that you want me to show up? And actually doing the more difficult conversations where actually it needs to be highlighted, where maybe you're not being as good as you want to be, and then allowing you to fix that. Like, that's the thing. And also that builds self-trust. And, you know, for me as well, it's built a lot of self-trust. Another thing that's been really helpful on this front is just doing this show. And I think I might have spoken about this before, but having 200 odd episodes of a podcast that is still going strong, that is still getting lots of downloads, that people are still listening to, watching on YouTube, you know, like, I know my shit. Like, I couldn't talk for 200 episodes and not know what I'm talking about. And again, the feedback that I get on the show is lovely and it really, really helps. But I know that I know what I'm talking about. And this is like evidence and proof. So again, this is a really good example of where a very practical, actionable thing that we can do can help our energetic and mindset stuff as well. And it can be very practical. So just doing those things has been really helpful. It's like convinced myself finally that I am actually good at what I do. And the background hum of noise is gone. And again, the benefits of that has meant that I don't shrink anymore in my business. I know that I'm good at what I do. And again, because we're heart-centered and highly sensitive, I think sometimes what we worry is when we do fully own that we're good at what we do, is that it feels a little bit arrogant. But I think with the way that it's come about for me, it feels like really natural and just in like a non kind of bullshitty way. Do you know what I mean? And I think this is just, again, because you've got the receipts to back it up. I think that's part of the way that it works. But that has been such a big shift for me, is like really collecting the evidence, really showing myself, that I do know what it is that I'm talking about, that I do get people really good results, that I am really good at what I do, and just any of that background noise is kind of quieting down. And it's not to say that it's perfect all the time and that I don't have moments of self-doubt, because I do, but now I have the self-trust to be able to get through that and to know that my intentions are always in the right place with people. And at the end of the day, you can't run a good business purely on good intentions, but my good intentions paired with my knowledge, my experience, my skills, that is what makes the difference. And then finally, the third thing that has shifted for me is that I regulate myself better through all of the emotions and the ups and downs that running a business will bring up for you, especially if you're a coach, because as I've said many times, when you're running coaching businesses and you are very much like in your business as the person who is leading it, fronting it, all that kind of stuff, a lot of stuff is going to feel like bigger for you than it is for other business owners. So for example, feelings of rejection, I've talked about self-doubt, imposter syndrome, all that kind of stuff, it just can feel a lot louder. And again, you layer on top of that being highly sensitive and heart-centered, and it's a double whammy of shittiness sometimes in your coaching business. But what I did was I learned how to regulate myself through those negative thought spirals. So instead of being like, right, I'm going to look for a job because everything's shit and my business is shit and I'm shit, I'm going to burn it all down because nothing's working, I started to better regulate myself through those things. So I got to the point where, one rejection no longer meant that my business was broken. One poor launch no longer meant that my offer was shit. Like, I was able to regulate myself through those experiences in a much, much better way. And part of that was just being able to balance your energy internally. And I keep wanting to use the word manage, but that's not the right word. I don't think we do manage our energy. I think we attune to it and I think we balance it. I think managing our energy is so much more of a masculine kind of way of looking at it, and I just don't think that's necessarily the case. But I think when we balance it, when we learn what we need as an individual to manage those emotions and regulate ourselves, I think that can make a huge difference. And really a big part of this from like a mindset point of view is stopping making one thing mean a massive amount of things. So again, one client says no, that does not mean that I'm never going to get another client. That does not mean that my business is terrible. If one launch doesn't work well, doesn't mean that the offer's terrible. It's kind of like, from that mindset point of view, it's catching myself before we start to kind of go down the rabbit hole of like, well, this means this. It's like, no, that doesn't mean this. Actually, it could mean many, many things. Something I used to teach in a mindset course that I had around food and healthy eating and stuff. And this is so weird. So this is where you get to see my absolute weirdness coming through. But anyone who watches Star Trek should know Spock and the Vulcans are very logical. So one of the things that I do, and I mean, this will not work for everybody because not everyone's brains will go through this whole thing with the logic, because ultimately our subconscious minds aren't logical. But this does help me, is that I imagine Spock standing next to me and being like, right, like, let's go through this logically, Laura. And he is standing there. I am imagining him standing there and like literally like let's actually go through this logically. Like, okay, so this client decided not to work with you. They said this, but do you think logically that means that? And I'm like, no, Dr. Spock, it does not mean that. So I have this whole conversation in my head with Spock, and it really, really helps me. But again, your metaphors and analogies and all that kind of stuff can be really helpful in this line of work and doing these things. But that was something that really helped me stop in the spirals. And I mean, it helps me in all kinds of different areas of my life, actually, because it stops me before I get into that point where we really are kind of getting into that negative spiral where we're kind of dragging ourselves down. And again, just to say, it is normal to experience these things to a certain degree. But what happens is when we're constantly on that roller coaster and we're constantly getting into negative thought spirals, it makes it very, very difficult to show up and run our business because, again, as I've mentioned before with other things, it feels like shit. It's awful on our nervous system. Like, we're not going to be able to show up as consistently and as deeply as when we are fully regulated. So really learning some strategies for helping me around that. And again, the biggest mindset thing is like, because this happens does not automatically equal that, and challenging myself when I do just assume that something is awful. Something means something awful, and like really being willing to challenge myself. So there we have it. There's 3 things out of many things that have really helped me change and grow and transform in my business personally as well. You know, none of this is just like siloed into your business. But what I tend to find is that the stuff that you do and work on personally also impacts your business and vice versa. You know, again, we are kind of in a relationship with our businesses and it's going to work both ways. So when we do start to balance our energy and actually are intentional about what's going on energetically and mindset wise, the differences that it can create. And like, honestly, I think, yes, business is strategy and I teach a lot of strategy, but we do need to have that other element, because you can do all the strategy you want, but if you think deep down that like your work is shit and you're rubbish at what you do, you're really, really going to struggle. So, you know, and with any of these things, like if you're, you know, deep down feel like you just want someone to save you financially, like you're really going to struggle to make money in your business, because how can someone save you financially if you're actually thriving financially? So these are the kind of things that I'm going to be talking about in the energetic shift. Please do come along. Please go and grab your space. You're going to get the recording if you can't make it live. There's some other bonuses as well. Obviously, I'm teaching way more than this. I'm going to talk a lot more about some of the personal stuff that I've gone through over the last few years and just share the dynamics of that energetically with the business. It's really, really interesting. So please come along. It's going to be so, so good. But anyway, guys, I will leave you there for this week. I really hope that you have a wonderful week. I hope that you are doing very, very well. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you've enjoyed about this episode of the show. If you're listening on the podcast, please pop me a DM on Instagram. I'm at WholeheartedlyLaura. I'd love some feedback on this episode. And yes, I will see you next week, guys. Take care. Bye.